All right. Finally, I'm gonna show some gameplay here. It's very, 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 very early gameplay. Don't get your hopes up. But yeah, so up until now, I've been working a lot on the single page application, the website basically. But now I have some stuff I've done on the actual game, really early stuff. So I'll just show that. It's gonna be underwhelming, but it'll. I just want to show this version so that you could see like it get better and better. So this is like the shittiest it'll look, the worst it'll look. But it'll only get better from here. But anyway, this is the first version of World's Hottest Game, aka this is like the spiritual successor to World's Hardest Game. I just have to call it something different now. But yeah, so basically one thing I mentioned or I brushed over last time was I needed to do like an actual game launcher. But I don't want to have to delay working on the game any further in order to make the launcher. So what I have now is I'm basically just embedding it on the middle of a page, but in the actual game it'll launch like full screen. It'll be like this full page size. But yeah, basically just for convenience right now, I'm doing like a really small version of it that doesn't launch properly, and it just has like a rudimentary like temporary launch. But yeah, in the future, it'll basically be the full screen. So it'll look, let me see if I can pretend for a second. It'll look kind of like this in the full version. But anyway, there's a bunch of complexities related to launching the game, which I'm just going to save for later. And right now, I'll just focus on making the game. But yeah, so right now it's super simple. There's really only a few features. There's a camera, there's a player, and there's different modes, graphics modes. So this, I'll turn off the boundary boxes. So this is the Stickman graphics mode. Then you have the real graphics mode, which I'll explain in a second. That's going to be like the main graphics mode is going to be the real graphics mode. And then you have the simple graphics mode. So this is like classic World's Hardest Game style. So if you want to play simple, you can it'll still be the same as the original game. You'll still have the simple graphics. And then if you play stick or real, it'll go into like 2.5D with a little bit of depth. But yeah, stick is for if you want something kind of more cool than the simple graphics, but you don't want to look at like real people, then you use the stick version. And then this will be the coolest, the real version. Right now it looks like complete crap, but it'll look cool in the real thing. So yeah, right now what I did was I just really, really quickly recorded a video in low quality of me going like this. So I don't have a treadmill. I don't have a costume on. I'm not a pretty woman. In the real version, it's all going to be like models, like pretty women, basically wearing costumes. But for now, we'll have to make do with me. But yeah, this is just the super basic version of it. And then I made like a really, really quick sprite sheet out of it. So this is the quality we're seeing now. It's crap quality, in other words. See, you could barely make out any of the features. And it's masked really stupidly, like really, imprecisely. But this is just for testing purposes, and I'm gonna add a better version later. And yeah, this sprite sheet isn't done the proper way either, but it's not worth explaining right now. But yeah, one thing is when you look at this version of the game, you could see it's a real person, it's me, but it's like super small, so you can't really, it kind of defeats the purpose of using real people if it's going to be that small. But in the actual version, so here I have texture scaling. If I were to say double the scale, this is kind of closer to what you'd see. So that this is this is the same thing as before, but double the size. So yeah, it's kind of hard to explain, but basically when it's full screen, this is about a quarter of the screen right now. When it's full screen, you'll be able to see the player larger. And then on top of that, the actual scale of the player will probably be more like this. Relative to the size of the walls, it'll probably be more like this. So basically, there's going to be, the hitbox is only around your feet, and you have to avoid the enemies where your eye has to kind of like anticipate the 2.5D. So if I pretend this square right here is an enemy, even though my torso is hitting the enemy, my bound box isn't. So yeah, basically one of the main differences is going to be before, when the graphics were simple, it's all bird's eye view, top down, so it's really easy to see the boundaries. Whereas the new version in stick or in real, it'll be a little bit more like you gotta have to kind of get used to the fact that your torso, like from your like knees up, isn't a boundary. It's only like around your feet. But yeah, so let me just think for a second. But yeah, this demo you're seeing, because it's so small and because it's so low quality and because the frame rate isn't that high, let me just see where I define the frame rate. Okay, so here I'm saying the stick man is 30 frames per second and the real person is like 24. Just for fun, I'll speed everything up. This is what 60 looks like. So what I may actually do is do the stick man in 60, but with more in-betweens, so it's like super smooth. But the player will be probably minimum 30, and it'll have more in-betweens. So I think this is about 13 frames. But the real person animation will be like probably 30 frames at 30 frames per second. It'll look more like that video I just showed you. So yeah, when the real person, when the sprite is larger, it's higher quality and it's got the 30 FPS, it's going to look a lot better. And of course when I have the costumes and the models and stuff in. But yeah, this is just a super rudimentary version. Also, when I'm walking away, it's kind of like at an angle a bit. So it looks a little bit weird when I'm walking away. And the boundary box isn't totally like centered. I'm not pivoting properly. Just because the sprite sheet isn't made properly, basically, because it's so early. But yeah, this is kind of cool because, yeah, this is the first version of the game. There's nothing fancy going on. What I'll go ahead and do is show you the code, just so you see what went into this. But yeah, some of the code is temporary, and some of it is, I didn't want to have to like get stuck in a loop where I'm trying to make everything perfect right away. So there's a lot of stuff which is kind of like, not really temporary, but it's like simpler than it will be in the actual thing. But yeah, I'll just do a quick look at the code here. You just reset those changes. But yeah, just for fun, I'll try actually like a really large scale. So this is kind of probably not quite this large, but when you're playing in full screen, the player's going to be more like this size. But yeah, and the actual game is going to take up the full screen. Oh yeah, but one cool thing. So one thing that's special about this game as opposed to other games, especially web games, is, for example, this is called a single page application. So one of the main benefits is if I leave the game, go around the site, do some stuff, because it's not actually changing the web page. When I go back to the game, I maintain application state, meaning the game isn't going to load again. The game is just, when I leave the game, it just stops drawing it, but it's still in memory. It stops drawing and it stops updating, but it's still there, remembered by the computer. And then when you come back to it, you can continue where you left off. So basically, for example, you'll be playing the game and you'll get like an achievement, and then you'll see like a pop-up saying like, oh, you got a new achievement, and then you can like leave the game, go to your achievements page or something, see your achievements, and then go back to the game and continue playing. So yeah, that's like the main reason you want a single page application for web games, is because with a game like this, the game and the website kind of like are supposed to complement each other. So you're supposed to be able to play the game, go back and forth from the website to the game, and have it be like totally seamless. But yeah, also I'll show you this. This is called the camera perimeter tiles visibility. This is just to prove that the camera is only drawing the minimum amount of tiles possible. So this is just a debug setting. But yeah, in the real game it would look more like this, where you only see the tiles on screen, and then I add and remove tiles as I need them. But yeah, so yeah, this is like a very early demo, which does demonstrate the power of a single page application, because the game's no longer there, and yet I can come back to it and resume where I left off. Whereas a normal web page, you'd have to load it and initialize it again. But yeah, keep in mind it's gonna be full screen, it's gonna be higher quality, and yeah, it's gonna be way cool. This is the shittiest it'll ever look, so it'll only get better from here. But yeah, as far as code goes, basically you have the game launcher, which right now I don't really have a launcher. I basically just embed it halfway through the page. But the launcher is kind of like loading doing all the loading the stuff you need, loading assets like textures and images, but also there's a thing where you can load JavaScript files at runtime. So what that means is I could have like a huge game with like million JavaScript lines, and then I only actually load those lines of code into memory once you actually start playing the game. But so that's called loading at runtime, loading JavaScript files at runtime. But that I only really need that later on, so I'm not going to do that now. And then the other thing is, these are like typical. These aren't web pages, but they're like pseudo web pages. Whereas the game itself is going to be also a pseudo web page, but a different type of pseudo web page. So it's like a special type of page. So when you launch the game, it's not the same as switching pages like this. It's the launch is like a whole more complicated page. It's like a special page switch. So that's the main thing that I don't want to have to do now, because it's a pain in the ass. But yeah, and then the launcher is kind of a pain in the ass. That's why I'm not doing it right now. It's like at least a week of solid work. Basically, it's not that easy to do. But yeah, there's other stuff like my asset manager, where when you have a single page application, you can in theory share assets between the game and the site. So you kind of want to track which assets are loaded globally for everything. Whereas right now, I don't even have all I do is use the basic asset manager that's built into the browser. But yeah, as far as code goes, when you first come to the game, all I do is a really rudimentary texture load, which is right here. All I do is I specify which texture I want to load, which there's only one right now, and then I just create a bunch of textures. And then later, when you're playing the game, you create sprites out of those textures. So this texture loader is like right into the player class. Whereas in the actual game and launcher, I'll have a whole asset manager like set of classes. So you wouldn't just define the textures directly in like this. You need like a global asset manager, and it's a pain in the ass basically. But it's not that hard, but I don't want to have to do it right now. My focus right now is get as much of the game done as possible, and then do all the other annoying stuff later once I have more visible progress. So another thing is, there's going to be the game itself, World's Hottest Game, and then there's going to be the game engine. And then there's going to be, in the future, other games, like Dungeon Dame. So the game engine is all the stuff that's shared between the games, and then World's Hottest Game and Dungeon Dame are going to be built on top of the game engine. So right now, what I'm doing is I'm doing everything directly in World's Hottest Game, and I don't have a game engine. The game engine is built into World's Hottest Game. And then later, when I add more games, I'm going to have to separate the game engine from World's Hottest Game so that it could be shared between the two, or between all the games. But right now, in order to facilitate progress, I'm skipping the asset manager, the game launcher, and the game engine, and I'm just going to go straight into this. So it just does like a really quick, so this is the main file for World's Hottest Game. Does a real quick load, creates an application. This, I'm just giving it a set width and height of like 610 by 500. But in the actual thing, in the actual launcher, it'll do like full screen basically. But yeah, then you do a basic initialization. All that really is right now is loading the textures. That is all it is. So right now, it loads the actual application. Then and now that I think, oh yeah, okay. Let me just think for a second. Yeah, sorry. First, it loads the application. Then it loads the textures. So that's taking the texture from the web server and loading it to your local machine. And then it's also taking the file of the texture and converting it into texture objects. So that's the first loading step. Once it only ever loads once. And then it initializes once also. Yeah, once you've loaded and initialized the game, if you leave the game and come back, it doesn't have to do it again. There's like a simpler initialization that you do, but yeah. Anyway, when you initialize the world, what I do is basically, back in the old day, I used to think of everything in terms of entities, and an entity is anything on the screen. Whereas now I have a little bit more modern way of looking at it, where there are actors, UI, and simple, and they're all extending the container class from Pixie. But basically, the short answer is an actor isn't necessarily a character. An actor is anything which can be interacted with. So it could be a player, or it could be an item, or it could be like something moving around that you can do something with. So an actor right now, all I have is a general actor, a character, and a player. But in the future, the other actors will be like items basically. And then the tiles aren't actors, because the tiles are basically just images that you see and that have very minimal interactivity. So the tiles are simples. The actors, like the characters, are actors. And then anything that you can click, like that the user kind of does in a user interface type way, is a UI. So that's the way I'm organizing it. There's actor, there's simple, and there's UI. But right now, I only have the actor class. But yeah, I'll just give you a quick idea of what the code looks like. So you initialize the element where you know where the canvas is. You create a new world. I'll show that in a sec. This is the main game update loop. This is to change the graphics mode. This is to track how many assets have loaded. This is rudimentary. It'll be replaced later with the asset manager. This is basic stuff. Blah, blah, blah. This is all pretty basic. Yeah, I don't think there's really much to show on this class. As the actor, you have container, boundary box. Whenever you show it, you have to do a bunch of initialization. So a init container basically creates the sprite out of the texture that you loaded, or if it's in simple mode, it just does a rectangle. This tracks like where the boundary is. The boundaries for like there's no hit detection yet, but there will be eventually, because the texture itself is actually larger than the boundary, so it's two different things. This is all basic stuff. This is moving. I have like all kinds of like low-level general classes, which help me all throughout the site. So it's like stuff that's shared between the site and the game. So one of the main things for hit detection is the rectangle class. I don't know why that's there, but the rectangle class, it has all kinds of stuff, and basically when I have a rectangle, I can stretch it one direction, I can stretch it the other direction, or I can like stretch it inward, and then I can move it, or I can leave it in one spot and then shift it out. There's basically all kinds of like different stuff you can do with a rectangle. So this helps me a lot with hit detection and with camera and stuff like that. That's something I had from earlier. Yeah, this is just using my rectangle class to move the boundary. This is this is the rectangle class here. So I'm like setting the left position of the rectangle, and then I'm shifting over the right. That's what this means. Because if I only set the left and I didn't move the right, then that would mean it got wider. But when you move, it stays the same width. So yeah, that's just the movement, basic stuff. This is all really basic stuff. This is just defining what all this basic stuff. Yeah, the character class is a little bit more, I guess. Character has animation stats, a state, a direction, and a flip. Then there's a main flip in it. I don't want to have to go into too much detail, but I'll just kind of skim through it so you get an idea what it looks like. This is so that, the pivot, this is so that, like, there's certain animations where there's only half of it. Like, when I walk down, it only actually does one step here, and then it flips it and does the other step. So the pivot is for that, and also for when I change directions. Pivot stuff. This is a really early version of the animation system, because there's animation system built into Pixie.js, but I'm going to do special types, so I have my own thing. But the actual animation system will be more complicated than this. This is just looping through the walk animation frames. This is the direction for flipping. This is determining which direction it's moving in. Like, this is up left, this is up right. This is some other stuff that I just mentioned. This is changing the texture so that it's showing the right state. So like, this is the walk state, this is the stand state. Right now in real mode, I only have a walk state, and I just use the first frame for the stand state. This basic stuff. This is all basic stuff. But yeah, it's gonna be kind of cool how I can fine tune like everything I need, like the animation frames per second, the boundaries, the texture sizes, all kinds of stuff. And the camera is gonna zoom in and out. So when you're at one-time zoom, the player texture is actually shrunk down, and then that way when you zoom in, it doesn't blur. You get like a more like a higher resolution image. And there's a thing built into Pixie.js called MIP mapping, where basically it takes the largest version of the image and then creates a smaller and then creates another smaller one. And then depending on the size you're seeing the image, it'll show the smaller one or the larger one. So basically it's a performance thing. But yeah, you're never going to have crap quality like this. You'll have good quality, and it'll still work with good performance. This is just saying which direction you can move in. And then these are the current states. There's only stand and walk right now. Yeah, then the player... this is to remember when I leave and come back, to remember where it is and stuff. This is to, when you're not in simple mode, when you're in stick mode or real mode, this is to create the sprite out of the texture. This is where you start the starting position. This is basic movement with the arrow keys. Changing state. If I'm moving, I'm in walk state. If I'm not moving, I'm in stand state. This is to set the state. There's certain things you got to do. The stickman, for example, some of the animation I already mentioned is like flip. It's like, if you look closely, when I'm walking down, I'm only walking with one foot. See, only the left foot's moving, but here you see both the left foot and the right foot are moving. So that's basically what that is like, there's certain things where the animation frame, there's more frames in the real one than in the stick ones. But yeah, there's like little things you got to do. This is just like rudimentary loader, I already mentioned that. This is defining, currently I only have one asset, which is just one image, which is this image. This is my whole asset image right now. And I'm also putting like all kinds of blank space in it just for convenience right now, but the actual thing will be more like, where was it? I think like here. So here, this is what a good sprite sheet looks like because I'm not wasting any transparent space. This is just a temporary sprite sheet where there's all kinds of transparent space. But yeah, this is just saying I have one asset, which is a sprite sheet, and then these are all the different images I extract from that sprite sheet. So 5 standing images. So this is the stickman. There's 5 stickman stands, and then these are all the frames for walking. So you see up and down have fewer frames because the up and the down do the first ones, and then it flips and then does it again. Whereas the like up left has both directions directly animated in. But yeah, these are all the stickman sprite sheets, and the offset X and the offset Y I don't want to have to explain right now, but basically when I remove the transparent space, it's telling me how much transparent space I removed, so that way each sprite is kind of like a different size. And yeah, this is just stuff I explained in the last video, but it's like fine-tuning the performance of the sprite sheets. Right now I'm only doing this part, and the offset and the width and the height are just temporary. These are the real sprites. These are just the same thing. Yeah, so that's most of the actor stuff. The camera is super basic right now. I have a more complex camera which does zooming and stuff. But this is just what's being targeted. Right now you could only target an actor. This is the pixels that are visible, the tiles that are visible. Pixels and tiles visible last update. So this is when you first show a map, everything's hidden by default, so I just decide which stuff to show. Then when you're playing the game, if something is moved, it'll do a bunch of updates. The update target is, right now it's always targeting the center of the player. The pivot is where, if it were to zoom, where it would zoom into. But since it can't zoom right now, this is kind of irrelevant. The position is basically, when I get to the corner, the camera pauses because I don't want to show any more of the map because there's no more map to show. And then when I'm in the middle, it like follows. So when I'm in the middle, it's moving the pivot, which is kind of hard to explain, but it's like there's 2 different types of things. There's moving the camera pivot and moving the camera position. If you never had to freeze the camera at the side, then you could just do everything with the pivot. But because I sometimes freeze at the side, I have to move the position and the pivot, basically. So the update position is for when you, let me take a sip here. It's when you hit the side of the map to know to stop moving the camera. And these calculations are all super basic, but when I add in zoom and other stuff, it gets more complicated. But what I do is I split them up. I split all the calculations up into smaller, simpler calculations, and then it makes it a lot easier when I add in the zoom. But yeah, I could show you, like, I have some old code here. Here. This is going to be more what it actually looks like. Let me see here. I think update viz or whatever. Or let's see. Restrict edge of map. This is what I was just talking about. This is the update position. But when you have zoom, see, I was trying to combine the code so that I can do X and Y at the same time, but it kind of makes it more complicated. But basically, you have to start working in the zoom. The Z is the zoom. The zoom complicates things. And same with calculating. So this is the position, but it's simpler because there's no zoom. This is the visibility. This is calculating which tiles are visible or which pixels and which tiles are visible. So like right now, if I go world.cam.viz, what you'd see is on the left, the 222 pixel of the world is visible. On the right, it's the 1000 that's visible. And that makes sense because the width is 810. And then for tiles, is this broken? Oh yeah, okay. I'm not using the X. Okay, there's a little bit of a thing I gotta fix there actually, because with rectangles I do X, Y, and I do X and left, but sometimes I only need the left because the X and the left are like redundant. But yeah, here I'm just ignoring the X and the Y and only doing the left and the right, but I'm gonna fix that. You need that for other stuff, but anyway, yeah, so anyway, the left tile is 6 and the right tile is 24. So if I were to go all the way to the left, then you'd see the left tile is 1, and it's because I'm hiding the perimeter. So now if I stop hiding the perimeter, now the left tile is 0. So you could see the 0 tile, and then as I move over, you see the 4th tile or whatever. Yeah, you got to calculate which tiles are visible. That's what this is. This will be more complicated when the zooming's in there. And then this is the culling, or this is like showing and hiding. So as I move, I track which stuff, for example, yeah. When I move on the x-axis, I track what was visible now and what was visible last update. So now I know there's a difference of tiles visible on the left. And then basically I hide the ones that are newly non-visible. So that's what this is. And I split it up into multiple sections to, even though it's like a little bit redundant, it's still easier to work with like this. Yeah, this is showing the tiles as they become visible, which is a little bit easier. These are like some of these stuff you'll see. I added like in my key manager, I track like which keys are down and stuff, but I added a new thing. I'm not going to show the whole thing right now, but is trigger combo. And this is useful for when I want to define a hotkey combo. So here I say Control and I. And what that's doing is every time the key down event fires, I can check if both the Control and the I are down. Oh god, I'm doing something. Okay, Control I does something in the browser. I didn't really realize that, but I'm gonna have to change that. But anyway, Control B is for the bound box. Control M is for the mode. So yeah, I added a little bit of a better like hotkey combo manager thing here. This is used a few times. I just showed them all, but this is for the bound box, for the graphics mode, and for the camera, hiding the perimeter tiles. Yeah, so that's basically all the camera stuff. Right now the levels are just a bunch of tiles, 0s and 1s, but in the future there'll be all kinds, in a starting position. But in the future there'll be all kinds of stuff like enemies and whatnot. Then I have a basic tile class, which it's not an actor or UI, it's a simple, like I mentioned earlier. All it is right now just a rectangle. But in the future, and this is to construct the initial tiles shown in the world, not necessarily shown, but that could be shown. But yeah, in the future, there's more tile properties, like if you're on an ice tile or whatever. But right now, all it is it visible or not? And yeah, I don't even track if it's a boundary or not because I don't have boundary detection yet. Yeah, and this is the world class. This is for the game world. So you have like the boundary boxes, the player, and the tiles are the only layers right now. But in the future, there'll be like enemies and items and like other stuff. But there's the game world, which if you imagine that the game, if you're inside the game, like as a character in the game world is everything you can conceive of. And then the actual game is the game world plus the UI. So like the UI is something, it's like an abstract concept that you wouldn't actually see if you're in the game world. But yeah, the game world is is what's in the actual game universe, and then the world's hottest game is like the or in the future there'll be a game state where you have the game state contains the world and the UI, whereas right now I don't really have a state manager, so I just have a world class basically, and that's all you can see. But yeah, this is just creating the different layers, initializing the player, initializing the camera, creating the tiles, updating, changing mode. So when I change mode, I have to remove the player and then add it back and initialize it in the same spot. And yeah, because for performance reasons, if I'm switching between stick mode and it's not really for performance reasons, but basically when you switch modes, you have to reconstruct things, or you have to like, yeah, you just have to reinitialize things. Yeah, that's basically it. So anyway, like the state manager and the asset manager and the loader, the launcher, there's all kinds of stuff that just general game engine stuff like the camera and the actors and tiles. I'm doing it all directly in the world in this game, just for simplicity's sake. And in the future it'll be more organized, but for now it's fine. So yeah, so anyway, I'm not sure what happened. Looks like there was a bug. Oh, I've never seen that before. But there were some tiles. When I switched in and out of this, it got confused somehow. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm going to have to look into that. But anyway, it should always show all the tiles, so it looked like I've missed some tiles there. But anyway, I'll figure that out. Yeah, so that's the main stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep working on the game and this like small version of the game. Do like a couple months of game development and make sure I'm making good progress, and then I'm gonna go back and add a proper launcher and stuff. I'm gonna like mainly the main thing is the launcher. So yeah, that's all the stuff for the game, and I also just wanted to quickly mention the font stuff. I was mentioning before that I was having trouble with like my advanced font features, and I finally fixed them. So I just want to show what that was. So basically, it's kind of hard to explain, but I'll zoom in here. So you can see how there's a label and there's like a value. The baseline of the label and the baseline of the value, when I have different fonts, should always line up. So here when I click it, it's going down a bit. That's supposed to happen. But for example, when I go to random font, before, if you were to draw like a baseline here, so this is the Arial times New Roman and then like the tall one. This is Arial times, so like the thing that I fixed is now the fonts always line up. So if I were to say print screen, if you were to look at this, you'd see that if I draw a line here, I don't know where the line thing is, line, you draw a line, oops. If I draw a line, the text across different fonts is always on the right line. And the way if you do HTML and CSS properly, it should work automatically. But in actuality, when you support like random fonts like this, it's kind of difficult. But yeah, that was like really important for me to fix because I'm fine tuning the sizes of the fonts. Like this is the futuristic font, it's size 15. This is the typewriter font, it's size 16, right? But they still need to line up on the same base. So the way you know that this is working is if I were to go like this. So now, see, I put it to 20. The middle typewriter text is at 20, but it still lines up on the base. And then if I put it at like 7, see, it still lines up on the base. So yeah, for fonts, when you support like multiple fonts next to each other, it's really kind of a pain in the ass to get this baseline thing working. But for example, like here, see, like these are 3 different fonts, but they're all on the same baseline. Or like if you have some like, me see here. Like here is Times New Roman, and then here is like tall font, but they still on the same baseline. Basically, I had to go through a long, hard, annoying thing to fix that because there's a thing called technical debt where if I didn't fix that, I'd be building up more and more crap to fix later. So it's kind of like if you're going into financial debt. So if you don't set up the CSS and the HTML and stuff properly, then everywhere where you have text, you're making little mistakes all over the place, and then you have to go back and fix all these mistakes. So it was a pain in the ass to fix this, but it prevents me from having technical debt, is what it's called. So you can see all these things line up. Now I know the proper rules to follow in order to get everything to line up. But yeah, it's kind of complicated. But if you want to see what my font stuff looks like, it's basically this, or like this one. So you see, like, I define a font. I don't know if I want to explain this, but you have the font and then the applying the font. So FA means font apply. So basically, you can't apply the font and define the font in the same spot. You have to define the font at an outer spot and apply it more specifically. But it's really hard to explain. And then I have a thing where you can override the font. In certain places like here, this is this whole thing by default is the medieval font. But here I'm using an override class to override with a different font. And basically when you support overrides and random font and random language, you need a real specific set of rules to follow in order to get all the baselines lining up and all the font sizes lining up and stuff. But anyway, I don't want to go too much in that. So anyway, now if you go into drunk mode, which is just a testing mode, you'll see everything lines up properly. It's hard to see, but yeah. And then also some text, like this text here, drunk mode and the fonts and stuff only work if I define the text properly. So certain text which is temporary isn't defined properly, so it's not affected by that. But yeah, this isn't a bug. This is because this is temporary text. But anyway, that'll be the last I'll talk about the website for a while, because I've been working on it for a damn long time. So from this point forward, I'm only making game updates and getting better and better with the game. So yeah, I'll probably do one every few weeks or so. But yeah, this is the crappiest version. It'll only get better from here, and eventually I'm gonna do game development for like 2 months in this simple thing. Then I'm gonna go back and make a proper launcher, and then like a rudimentary loader, or like a less rudimentary loader, because I already have a rudimentary loader. But yeah, once I get the proper launcher in, you'll get a better idea of what the game actually looks like, and once I get more updates in. But yeah, for now, I'm just going to spend like 2 months only doing game on the simple launcher. So yeah, you'll just see, like, I'll add in hit detection, camera stuff, zooming in and out, different states, 2.5D depth, you know, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, this is just the super basic version. Right now I'm on the local version, but before I post this video, I'll deploy it onto the actual version. So if you were to go to Fair Maiden Games, right now it's zoomed in, but if you go to Fair Maiden Games, I'll deploy it so that you can go here and play it. This isn't the right version. I'm going to deploy the proper version. But yeah, if you want to play the the example I was showing, just go to fairmaidengames.com/whg/play and you'll go to it. But yeah, I'm going to do a video every couple weeks and then deploy the latest version every couple weeks. So this is version 0.01.01. The next one will be 0.01.02. So yeah, if you want to play 0.01.01, which is this version, then you can just go there and it'll work. I'll just deploy it before I post the video. Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, I'll just, you'll see in the next video how much progress I can make in a couple weeks. Hopefully it'll be like a decent amount. I'm going to be doing some like shadows so that the player is standing on like an oval shadow. Then overlay text so that you can have like text that's affected by the fonts in the language that overlays on the game. Then a basic achievement. So I'll have like a coin or something you can collect, and then you go to the achievement page. You'll see that you got the achievement, and then when you go back, you'll still be able to come resume where you left off. Then basic masking and a mini map. So yeah, there's going to be a mini map which shows which areas of the map you've been to and stuff. And then I'm going to have different colors, and after that I'm going to go from there. Probably add hit detection. Do that before the colors. Actually, maybe not. But yeah, as I work, I always find like little tiny tasks that I could do along the way. So I'm just building up these miscellaneous tasks. And then I'll go and fix them later because I don't want to. Right now, I'm focusing on getting game dev progress in without getting jammed up with all kinds of stuff. If you really want to get jammed up, you can jam yourself up as long as you want. But anyway, yeah, I'm going to deploy this and you can go play it. And in a couple weeks, there'll be a new version that you can play. So you'll be able to follow the development and see how it evolves. It gets better. Yeah, I have some other stuff I was going to show, but I'll just wait till later. So anyway, that's it for now. So check in a couple weeks and I'll have a new version.